This year has had a way for me, I don't know if it has for you, of whittling away some of the things that were really insignificant that I had put too much value on. I don't know if you might not have this problem in life, but I had put too much value on things that were not worth what I had put on them. They were insignificant, in fact. And so this year has been a whittling away for me of things that I thought were important and are not. In fact, I think probably this year has been one of the most transformative years just in my general perspective. And so today I want to talk a little bit about what I've been feeling just in my own life and kind of where my family's headed and where I feel like the Lord wants the church to go from here. Is that okay? For 3 of y'all, that's all right. That's fine. That's fine. We're gonna convince the other 97%. It's fine. It's fine. Hey, the first text is in Psalm 39. Psalm 39. Today I want to preach a message called The Speed of Time. The Speed of Time. You feeling good? Anybody ready for turkey? I don't want to make you jealous, but my grandmother makes the greatest dressing. Actually, it's the greatest food that's ever been made in the history of the mankind. And you say, Jordan, can I have some? No, you may not. I don't share it. I don't even think about allowing anyone else to even taste it. That's not what we do in my family. We don't share food. Psalm 39, verse 4. Are you there? This is good. Show me, O Lord, my life's end. Oh, that's super encouraging. Thank you. Show me, O Lord, my life's end and the number of my days. Let me know how fleeting is my life. Let me know how fleeting is my life. You have made my days a mere handbreadth. The span of my years is as nothing before you. Each man's life is but a breath. I promise you I'm going to get to the encouraging part. Psalm 90, verse 12. Flip over to Psalm 90. I'm not very good at math, but I think it's just a few chapters over. Psalm 90, verse 12. Psalm 90, verse 12. You there? Psalmist writes this: teach us to number our days aright, that we may gain a heart of wisdom. Psalmist says that a heart of wisdom is numbering our days correctly, having the proper perspective on the life and the days and the time that we have here on this earth. Wisdom looks like that. Again, one more passage, Romans chapter 13, on the big Bible. Justin, if you'll flash that up. Romans 13, verse 11. And that knowing the time, now he had been talking about living right. Paul had been writing to the Romans about living in the light of God, living in the good things of God, resisting the evil things of the age. And he says, and that knowing the time, that now it is high time to awake out of sleep, for now our salvation is nearer than we believed. That it's time to wake up. Now is not the time for the church to be asleep, distracted, or numb. It is time for the church to wake up. Can we bow our heads and ask the Lord to speak to us today? Lord, we love you. We're thankful for your word. It is ever challenging, always transforming. And God, let it be life-giving. I pray that it would produce a harvest of righteousness in us. I pray that transformation would come from your word today. We love you, honor you, and praise you. And it's in Jesus' mighty name. Everybody said, I think one of the greatest challenges that parents have as they have younger children, especially I think in elementary age, but really any age, one of the greatest challenges that parents have in their parenting is trying to get your children to understand that things have value and that things cost money. I feel like I have to tell my kids that we don't have like an infinite amount of money on a regular basis. They just think money's everywhere, right? And because dad has more money than they do, only by a little bit, there's plenty more where that came from. And maybe you figured this out I haven't figured this out yet. I've got a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old, and I'm still trying to figure out how to get them to understand the value of things, and that things, they're not free. They cost money. They have value. I don't think that kids are going to learn this really until they're having to pay for things themselves. Have you noticed, right? Like, you probably didn't learn how to do this until you had to pay for your first car, and then all of a sudden that car was a little cleaner than the car you didn't pay for, right? That house that you bought, instead of your parents, a little bit different, right? Like the kids nick the walls and you lose your mind. Anybody else? So we're trying to teach them like the value and the cost of things, because it became so clear to me the other day. Grayson, my youngest, he's 5-year-old. He just had a 5-year-old birthday party, and he got toys, all toys. I'm like, why are we buying toys for him? He just needs clothes and socks and underwear, okay? Because he goes through underwear very quickly. And so I'm like, can we just buy underwear? It would have helped me out a lot. But he got all toys, just toys everywhere. And one of the main things that Grayson wanted was boomerangs, because evidently he's into Australian Aborigine culture. I don't know. But he wanted boomerangs. And if you know Grayson, this makes sense. He wanted boomerangs, and so we got him a pack of boomerangs. And dear Lord, boomerangs are expensive. Did anyone know this? We spend entirely too much money on some misshaped plastic toys. Well, Grayson, he unwraps them, and immediately he goes to the backyard. Him and his older brother, they go to the backyard, and they are going to start throwing boomerangs. And my statement to them is this: guys, be careful. If you lose them, they're gone, okay? That's right. That was the first thing they're running out the door. Dad says that. Be careful. If you lose them, they're gone. I'm not buying any more boomerangs. 3 minutes later. This isn't even like pastoral exaggeration, okay? I promise. I've exaggerated some stories that may be shocking to you. This is not exaggerated. 3 minutes later, Grayson comes up. He goes, Dad, all the boomerangs are gone. I said, what? He's 2 on the roof, 1 in the bushes so far, no one can get to it. I was like, oh my goodness. And then he says this, and I almost lost my mind. He goes, it's okay. You can buy me more. So that's fine. You can pay mortgage next month, old boy. It's okay. You can buy me more. How would you ever have value on something? How would you ever understand value if you think there's just more where it came from? We don't ever, if the idea is that there's always more, I can always get more, we won't ever have value on that thing. No, value comes from what? It's rarity. It's preciousness. The intrinsic value of something is how precious something it is, how difficult it is to obtain, or how little of it you have. So I think the big question today as we begin to talk about the speed of time is, do you think that we ever approach time the way that my children approach their toys? That we waste it, or we allow our priorities to get out of line simply because we just believe, well, there's plenty more where this came from. There's plenty more time. I've always got another day to fix it. I've always got another month to repair. I've always got a New Year's resolution to fix it. There's plenty more where that came from. Friends, if time is just something that we always feel like we have more than enough of, we will live our life wasting it. I think on some level, I think we as Christians, because Scripture reminds us over and over again, I think there needs to be a healthy and a hearty reverence for our days. Like a healthy and a hearty reverence for our time here on this earth. Because time is passing. Time is flying by. And have you noticed you can't slow it down? Have you noticed you can't stop it? You know, time is linear, which means that it's going in one direction, and once it is gone, it's gone. Like once it's gone, and there's nothing you can do about it. If you have kids, you're very aware of this, aren't you? Do you remember when they were a baby? You remember when they were born? Probably for most of you, that feels like yesterday. It probably just feels like a week ago that they were born. And I imagine that they're probably older now. Time just flies by. And you remember those seasons when they were first born, you're like, oh, I just can't wait till they can like sit up and do things for themselves. You know what I mean? And then they start talking, you're like, oh, I kind of wish they didn't do that. It's amazing that the seasons we wish we could fast forward through now we want back, probably, on some level. But you can't get them back. Once a stage has been left, once a season is over, you don't ever get those back. Time is moving. Time is flying. You cannot slow it down, and you cannot stop it. And this is difficult. This is difficult to hear. This is difficult to think about. This is difficult to talk about. And yet I don't believe that there's anything that's more transformative in our life than this topic. You may not be aware, our children's church program runs on a curriculum called Orange. And Orange curriculum provides everything basically for your children back in their children's church, top to bottom. It's a really, really great curriculum, all inclusive. And but one of the great things about the children's church program, it's got this app that goes along with it. It's called Parent Cue. And for the record, we encourage the parents to use Parent Cue because this empowers and enables the parents to come alongside the lessons that they're learning in the back today, and it allows you this week to reinforce that which they've already learned this week. Really, really awesome app. And by the way, let me just go ahead and, while I've got your attention, our children's church program is just second to none. It is really, really fantastic. And if you have children back there, please say thank you to the workers back there because they're putting up with our kids, okay? And they're working hard, man. It's really, really amazing. Our children's program has doubled this year, so that's fun. And so really amazing stuff. But the goal of Gateway and the children's program is not to be the primary source of instruction for your kids, but to be the supplemental source for what you're already doing. And we just want to partner with you and come alongside with you in the raising of your children. And so there's this app called Parent Cue. It's really, really good. The videos are on there. There's questions you can talk about, all the scriptures that they're learning. Really, really good stuff. However, it's got this feature. That I have a love and hate relationship with. And it's a countdown in weeks until the time when your children move on to like the next season of their life, whether that's college or work when they're about 18 years old. And it's a countdown. It's a countdown in weeks until my children essentially shift seasons from being my children to kind of begin to be independent. And Nikki shows it to me sometimes. And I told her to get behind me, Satan, because I don't want to see it. Seriously, I hate it. There's something inside of me that just cringes every time I see the weeks begin to count down that I have left with my children at home. It's so difficult. But I got to be honest with you. I don't think there's anything in that day that rearranges my priorities quite like seeing that countdown. There's something about the brevity of life that we don't like to talk about. There's something about the brevity of life we don't like to think about, which is why we believe the lie that we have plenty of time so easily. But I don't think that there's anything in our life that transforms us, adjusts our perspective, or arranges our priorities any better than the topic of the brevity of life. Now, you're probably not going to talk about it at Thanksgiving. Like, hey, Frank, let's talk about how short life is. You know? Like, it's probably not going to come up on Thursday, and that's fine, but it is something that needs to be on the forefront of our mind. Because there's something about putting our perspective on the end that puts our priority on today. There's something about putting our perspective on the end that puts our priority on today. If time is something that you have no problem if time is something that you have no problem wasting, then you have not really thought about the end very much. No, there's clarification and there's prioritization and focusing on that which is to come. It allows you to live in the now, doesn't it? It puts a priority on the now. Charles Spurgeon says that now is the watchword of the wise. Isn't that good? Now is the watchword of the wise, meaning that you can't live in yesterday. It's already gone, and tomorrow is not guaranteed, so how important is today? The psalmist says it's wise. It's wisdom to understand the number of your days and live today. It's wisdom. And so maybe they're saying, Jordan, well, this is awfully practical. I'd also like to argue that this is a deeply theological issue. Time is a theological entity. You know, we serve a God who dwells and exists outside of time. Like, God doesn't have a clock. God is not wearing a watch. God is not concerned with time. Time is no issue to our God. He dwells and exists outside of time. He is eternal. One of the craziest scriptures in all of the Bible to me is the very first one. It says, in the beginning, God. In other words, God was there before the beginning. It's like, I don't even know what that means. God is eternal. He is from everlasting to everlasting. He is the beginning and He is the end. Peter tells us that one day is like 1,000 years to God. And some days feel like that. But 1,000 years is like a day. Time is of no thing to God. And yet, He created time. And more importantly, He chose to step into time. Jesus put on flesh and bones, and He stepped into time. A God who dwells outside of time stepped into time. Lived for 33 years here on this earth. But even more than that, within the confines of time, God has decided that He would act and move in our life. Within the confines of time, He unveiled His plan of salvation through Jesus. Within the confines of time, He transforms you and I more into the image of His Son, Jesus. Within the confines of time, He works miracles. He blesses us. He opens doors for us. He protects us, all within the confines of time. So God dwells outside of time. He created time. He moves within time. But I think maybe even more overwhelming is that God has entrusted to us time. He's trusted you with the time that He's given you. He's entrusted with us the number of days that we have. And He's entrusted that we will live out His will, fulfill His purposes, follow after Him, glorify Him, live a life of godliness, live a life of goodness. In other words, God has entrusted our days to us so that we can live well. God dwelling and existing outside of time. He created time, He moves within time, and He has entrusted to us time. And while we may not ever be able to determine the number of our days, we can most certainly determine the contents of our days. And God has asked us and desires for us to live well. Live well. And you know, God, that the number of days that He has given you and I here on this earth, God wants them to be good days. I'm not saying perfect days, but God wants us to live a good life, a satisfied life, a life of joy. I was reading this week and they were talking about how Jesus was the most joyful person that's ever lived. He's the happiest person that's ever lived. And so sometimes we think like, well, we're talking about the brevity of life. We're talking about how short life is. So, well then, we probably better get busy. Like, we probably better hurry, right? If life is short and if time is fast, we better hurry. We better hurry and scurry through life because there's too much to do, right? We need more than 24 hours in a day. We got to get busy. And today, I would simply like to argue the opposite. I would like to argue the opposite. That one of the greatest enemies to your joy in this life is busyness. One of the greatest enemies to your satisfaction and fulfillment is a hurried life. Maybe more importantly, the greatest enemy to our walk with God is hurry. They don't go well together, do they? And you might be thinking, well, Jordan, it's just hurry. Everybody's hurried. Go to Costco. Is that not the worst place on the planet? Everybody's busy, George. It's just busyness. Everybody's busy. Look around. Yeah, let's look around for a minute. Thank you for bringing that up. Let's look around. Let's take a peek at the world around us. Could we categorize them as joyful? Like, do you think that we could look around the world and see the hurry and the scurry and think, man, there's a lot of just satisfied, fulfilled people out there? And they're probably really walking with God. No, I think let's just be honest for a moment. As we look around at the hurry and the scurry and the busyness of the world around us, don't we just see a lot of frustration? Don't we see a lot of discontentment? Don't we see a lot of people who are angry and anxious? We don't see a lot of good things. I think we see a lot of people things. Because there's something in our culture. There's something about our culture that has told us that the more the better. The more the better. And that the quality of our life is determined by the quantity of things in our life. And friends, it's a lie. It's a lie. It is not true. More is not always better. More is just more. More does not always mean better. And the quantity of things on your schedule does not mean a quality life. The quantity of possessions that you have does not mean that you have a quality life. More just means more. So I wonder, I really wonder. I wonder if we're going to pursue a life of joy and a life of satisfaction and a life of goodness and a life of godliness, are we going to pursue the way of the world, or are we going to live the way of Jesus? Because one road does lead to joy. One road does lead to goodness. One road does lead to a family that is satisfied and rich and happy, and the other does not. The other does not. It will lead to brokenness. It will lead to frustration, and it will lead to discontentment every single time. Every single time. Because can I tell you something? Busyness and sin have the same effects on our life. Busyness and sin have the exact same effects on our life. They disconnect us from God. They disconnect us from people and family. And they disconnect us from our own soul. Busyness and sin, no, they have similar effects. Which means that, hear me, a hurried life and a busy life is never without consequence. It's never harmless in your life. I just believe life's too short. Time is too fast to live hurried and busy. Life's too short. Time is too fast. Your kids are gone too soon to live hurried and busy and distracted. And once the time is gone, friends. And once our days are up, our days are up. So what are we going to do with the time we've been given? You get to choose for your life, but as for me and my family, I want to live a passionately involved, a significantly engaged life with the things that God has entrusted to me most. My family, my children, my calling, and my time. I want to take those things and I want to steward them and curate them well. And everything else can wait. I'm telling you, I've been feeling this all year long. Woo, this is about 10 months, okay? Just coming all out right now. can I give you some handles? Can I give you some things that I've been trying to do in my family that Nikki and I, we've been talking about, we've been trying to do in our family. If you want to write them down, you'd be smart, okay? 4 things, just 4 things. Is that okay? Okay. Are you ready? 3 things. I cut one of them out. I didn't think you were ready. I'm totally kidding. I just miscounted. I didn't go to math school. I was a communications major. Number 1, are you ready? Establish what is most important. Everything else can wait. Establish what is most important. Everything else can wait. Now, that word establish is not like, let's talk about it and then pull up a notes thing in your phone and just leave it there for the rest of the year, okay? That word establish is a word that is, it even goes beyond commitment. It is like to solidify, to put something into concrete. To establish it is a deep sense of commitment. So establish what is important. Everything else can wait. So decide, as a family, you and your spouse, decide what is most important in your life. Seriously. You can call them priorities, you can call them metrics, you call it whatever you want to. Decide what is most important in your life. Commit to those things. Commit to them. Commit to them. I know that's a dirty word in our culture. Commit to those things. And then have the tenacity to say no to things that will hinder your commitment to those things. Everything else can wait. And if you get to it, fine. And if you don't, who cares? Because it's not here. It's not the most important thing. It has not been solidified as your family's plan. Find something. Find your priority. Set your metrics. What is the win for your life? Can I tell you some of mine? My greatest goal in our family, our greatest goal is to raise godly children. Above all else, I can tell you something, friends. Everything else can wait. Baseball? You kidding me? No, I don't care. Sports? Please. Education? I don't care. Second to them being godly men of God. I don't want anything else other than them being godly men of God. Everything else can wait. So I will have my boys in church on Sunday morning. I will have my boys in church on Sunday morning. Why? Because my greatest goal for them is that they serve Jesus. Everything else, please, it can wait. Because what profit a man if he gains the whole world yet loses his soul? I'm sorry, I'm preaching too much today. I want a wife that loves me. Whoo, and she does, y'all. I want a happy marriage. I want a good marriage. So you know what? Everything else can wait. So if there are things in our life that will rob or distract or destroy that, it's gone. I don't care. Because it is not one of the things that I have committed to in my life. Commit, solidify, establish that which is most important in your life. Everything else, it can wait. We good? All right. You ready? Number 2, just because it's offered doesn't mean it's required. Just because it's offered doesn't mean it's required. You know, you don't have to do everything that comes your way. You don't have to agree to everything. You don't have to say yes to everything. Just because it's offered doesn't mean it's required. You know, your kids don't have to be in everything. You don't. You really don't. You don't have to go to every birthday party. Just because it's offered doesn't mean it's required. And I think in order to have the ability to say no, ask yourself the why. So why would we do this? Understand your why for doing things. Why am I doing things? Why are we going there? Why are we a part of this? Why are we doing that? And ask yourself honestly, is it insecurity? Is it you're trying to look like you got it all together and you can do it all? Ask yourself, seriously. Ask yourself, why am I doing this? Because I think the why will determine so many things. The why will clarify so many things. Is it worth doing or is it not? Just because it's offered doesn't mean it's required. You ready? Number three. Identify the things that rob our attention and our affection. Identify the things that rob our attention and our affection. Mine was my phone, as it might be for some of you. It would rob the affection and the attention for my wife, for my sons, and it was one of those things that would rob my attention and my affection for the Lord. And what I've realized is that nothing that happens on my phone is even a fraction of as important as what happens with my family. Nothing that happens on my phone comes close to being as important as my family or my relationship with the Lord. And I got to be honest with you, man. For me, this was difficult. It still is. There was and there is an addiction to this thing. An addiction. I can prove it to you. Start deleting things on your phone. And what are you going to do the first moment there's a slight sense of boredom or just sitting there? You're going to grab your phone, you're going to open it, you're going to look for that thing, and it's not there. And you're like, oh, what do I do now? Which tells me that my attention and my affection was there rather than where it was supposed to be. So I got to a point where I decided Instagram was not nearly as important as my family. And that my news app wasn't going to rob my attention and my affection another minute. My phone has gotten really bare, and I'm really, really glad. And now if I want to scroll some things, I scroll pictures of the boys and some pictures of Nikki. Y'all got weird with that. I didn't mean it like that, y'all. Y'all got real weird. I mean, we'll talk about it later, but come to table for two. I got tired of things that weren't worth my attention and my affection, robbing me of my attention and my affection. And what I'm trying to do is love well, right? Because isn't that where we find the most joy in life? Isn't that really where we find the most satisfaction, fulfillment, is when we are loving well, when we're loving the Lord well? When we're loving our family well, when we're loving our spouse well. Isn't that when we find true joy? I mean, like true joy, not dopamine hits. I'm talking about true joy. But you cannot love well and be in a hurry at the same time. They're incompatible. You'll never love your children well in a hurry. You'll never love your family well in a hurry. You'll never love your spouse well in a hurry. You'll never love the Lord well in a hurry. Friends, life is short. And I want to live well. I don't want to be so consumed with distractions that I miss the gifts. We're in a season right now where there's going to be a lot of things vying for your attention and your affections. Refuse it. Everything else can wait. Let the Lord reveal to you that which is most important and establish that in your life and fight with everything within you to guard it, to keep it, and to love it well. Will you bow your heads?